we can feel that we have one more week to go for Christmas. And what does this time of the year mean to you and to your life? You know, when my parents were living, my mother just passed away a few months ago, Christmas was always a family time. It was a time of gift giving. That's the tradition in most of the families in USA. Some people buy Christmas gifts throughout the year, and some procrastinators do their last-minute shopping this week. For those that are alone or single, with no family to visit, this can be the loneliest time of the year. And so many fall into depression, alcohol, and drug abuse during this holiday time. So it is very important for each one of us to really know what is the real meaning of Christmas. You know, most of us, as I look around, including myself, our families are very separated all around the world in this age of globalization. And we long for them. And we wonder what Christmas really means without our families. Today's text in Matthew mentions of a seemingly lonely man by the name of Joseph. Out of nowhere, he finds out that his fiancée is pregnant. They were not married, and they did not have any sexual relationship. So can you imagine what he would have gone through with that kind of horrifying news? I presume that he was very, very disappointed. He felt very betrayed by Mary and really hurt and angry. Any man, even today, will feel the same. But it was totally unimaginable 2,000 years ago in the Middle East Jewish culture. What should Joseph do in such an impossible reality? Probably he was too ashamed to discuss with anyone, and no one will really fully understand what was going on anyway. Some will suggest that he deal with Mary according to the law. Some may suggest stoning her to death for adultery. This was a situation in which his male ego was at stake, and the security of his fiancée, young Mary, and her life was also at stake. The Bible does not say how old Mary was at the time of her pregnancy, but many scholars believe that she was about 15 or 16 years old, as was the custom of girls that was up for marriage. I imagine that Joseph really prayed about this, agonizing prayer and many sleepless nights. And Joseph finally came down with a plan. He decided to break the engagement discreetly so that Mary will not be exposed to public disgrace and become an outcast girl from her community. He was really a decent man, considering the culture of his time. But his life was not going to go according to his plan. Unknowns to him, God had another plan for his life. And God's plan came to him in his sleep, through his dream. The angel said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Can he trust his own dream? Do you trust your own dream? Does Joseph really know what this dream really meant? His fiancée, Mary, was picked by God to be the mother of Jesus, and he naturally was picked by God to be the earthly father of the baby. This dream must have been as bewildering to him as Mary becoming pregnant without his knowing. But what does Joseph do with this kind of impossible dream? He does not question the angel, and he had no resistance to what he was asked to do and to be. He totally, absolutely trusted what the angel told him in his dream, and he took action right away. He took her as his wife so that he can protect and take care of the pregnant Mary and the upcoming birth of the son that he does not know of. I'm really fascinated by this kind of faith because for me, I have to question what I do not understand, and I resist what I do not want to do. When we do Christmas pageant, Joseph almost appears to be an extra. He has nothing to say. He really just stands still next to Mary and looks at the baby. What is going on in his mind, looking at his baby that he had nothing to do with? Was he happy that a new baby was born? But Joseph the dreamer here, just like Joseph the dreamer in the Old Testament, was a man of great faith, whose faith became a path, a way that brought God's kingdom to this earth. I want us to look at Joseph's faith as a way to prepare for our own Christmas today. As a Jewish man, a descendant of King David, he probably have learned of his people longing for the Messiah promised by God to save his people. He would have read the scriptures and have known the text that we have read today in Isaiah. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, a young woman is with child and shall bear a son and shall name him Emmanuel. We read the scriptures and we also know that what God wants from us through the teachings of Jesus and the way of life Jesus shown us. But how often do we say as a Christian, I am the one called by God to bring God's kingdom on earth as God has planned? For Joseph, when he was called to fulfill that prophecy, he was totally, absolutely obedient to his role and responsibility, with full knowledge that God is going to be with him. Emmanuel. What may come with that role and responsibility, he does not know, but he trusts that role and that responsibility. His faith was such that he trusted God, and God will be with him every step of the way. This Christmas, I want us to really look into our own faith. And I want to challenge each one of us seriously taking on that role, that I am the one called by God to bring God's kingdom to this earth as it is in heaven. We always sing when we end our worship service, "Here I am, send me, Lord." And that's the word of Isaiah when he was called by God. The situation that we are today is really gloomy. If you talk with anyone or with any group of persons in these days in this country, we can easily hear of our nation in depression and in despair. I was at a retreat, and it was going to be a fun retreat for the last few days, but the whole retreat of our leadership, we talked about what's going on with 최순실 Gate, what was going on in our government, and with demonstrations, and with depression that we see all around us. I heard that some persons are going to sue President Park for the depression that they are going to go through. I live in Gwanghwamun. My office is here, my home is here, and my church is here. And so every day, I'm dealing with the despair and depression of the people. I also live with many stories of horror that surrounds my new president, Donald Trump, as a US citizen. Day in and day out, my friends text me, my family texts me what's going on. And there are serious predictions of economic crisis that will be coming upon us in the next few months or in the next few years. A couple of weeks ago, I spent a week in Bostock, Russia, with Methodist bishops and ministers, where I learned of the depressing plight of Korean Russians who went through endless deportation from this place to that place, from their homes throughout the last 150 years, including the forced migration to Central Asia 80 years ago. And our Korean government is going to commemorate that deportation 80 years ago that happened through Stalin. And at the airport at Vladivostok, I saw a bunch of men, hundreds of them. And I learned that there were North Koreans who were construction workers and laborers in Vladivostok. Young men looking so old and haggy and tired. They work more than 12 hours a day with very little pay. I was in Vladivostok to talk about the possibility of building this prayer, unification, peace center that can help these Korean Russians and the North Korean laborers. So, depressing stories are all around us, and it is within us. And in this time and age, Christmas is coming upon us. And we ask again, what is Christmas beyond shopping and gifts and Christmas trees? Christmas falls on December 25th every year. Christmas comes in the season of light. Christmas comes during winter solstice, the longest night of the year. We celebrate light at this time of the year because there is a lot of darkness. It is in the darkness that light has power. More than ever in our lives, we need Christmas to bring light to the millions and millions of people that are in darkness. Actually, the world into which Jesus was born into, the land that Joseph was preparing for the birth of his son, it was very similar to what we are in today. The Israelites were living in a divided homeland of northern Israel and southern Judah. As one people, they were divided, and the same people were like enemies to each other. And they were attacked by superpowers that were around them. The powers of Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. They were attacked and colonized by these great powers. When Jesus was born, they were under the Roman rule. They had to pay very high taxes to their colonizers. And people were suffering from political and religious oppression. And there was a huge gap between the rich and the powerful and the ordinary and the poor. Joseph was certainly not in the group of the rich and the powerful. And all these people, they were longing and praying for the Messiah to come. We are in that situation too. But what do people usually do when they are afraid and they are in darkness? When we are afraid, we are worried, we are in fear, and we try to run away. My uncle calls me, he is over 80 years old, and he calls me this morning. He said, I'm so disappointed at our country. I should have migrated to USA many, many years ago, but my wife didn't go. You know, we want to run away when we are in anxiety and in fear. But God, our God, chooses to come into the darkness, to the ordinary and to the poor. God announces Emmanuel to God's people, that God will be present with us in this darkness. And God has sent the light through Jesus. We should not forget this at Christmas, that Christmas is about God's light coming down upon his people to be with them. And God's way of coming to the people is coming as a newborn baby who needs all the help from people around the baby. People like Joseph and Mary to nurture and care for the baby. And it is through the faithful life of persons like Mary and Joseph that God's kingdom comes to earth as it is in heaven. And that's God's way. And today, in 2016, it is our turn. It is through our faith in Christmas that will bring light to our world and to our own lives. We cannot let the depressing stories of Chesunsi Gate or whatever and whoever, the depressing stories of what's happening in Venezuela, in South America, the depressing stories in Syria and the refugees all around the world to bring us down or to bring our nations down. And that's not what we are called to be as Christians. We sang the hymn today, "Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace, peace on earth and mercy mild. God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise. Join the triumph of the skies. Peace on earth and mercy will bring joy to all the nations." That's the promise that we trust and have faith in. And that's what we are about in our role for Christmas preparations. A couple of weeks ago, the ministers and the staff sat together and said, we would like to have a theme for this Christmas. What should that theme be? And we agreed that it would be about peace. We definitely need peace in our society and our nation. But most of all, we need peace in our own lives and in our hearts. One of my favorite hymns in our hymnal is the one that we sang today. Let there be peace on earth. If you are willing, it is in number 431. It says, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God, our Creator, children all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let it be the moment now. It's not tomorrow. It is now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. It's a very powerful hymn for me. The lyrics of this hymn was written by a woman, Jill Jackson. She attempted suicide, but did not succeed. After that tragic incident, she said she knew for the first time the unconditional love, which is God. She said, you are totally loved, totally accepted, just the way you are. In that moment, I was not allowed to die, and something happened to me which is very difficult to explain. I had an eternal moment of truth in which I knew I was loved, and I knew I was here for a purpose. And her purpose was to be the peace, to start the peace from her own life. After this realization, she spent years exploring the spiritual nature of her own life and her relationship with God. Then she discovered her love for writing and began to write songs. And she met a man that she married who wrote the music for this hymn as well. And that was written in 1955. At that time, with this hymn, the young people that met in retreat sang this hymn and started the peace movement. The peace that we need, it starts from me, and it starts with you. The peace that we need starts from how I live my life. Then we begin to see more clearly how people are longing for peace in the darkness of the night that's around us, and how we can be the peace for them in their own lives. We dream for peace in the midst of the world where there is no peace. That's an impossible dream when we hear about terrible news that are happening every day around the world. Between our political parties, between the rich and the poor, between races, between religions, peace almost looks impossible. But we need to trust our dream for peace. And we need to trust that Christmas, the coming of Jesus, is about the coming of peace in our lives. And Joseph, the father of Jesus, lived that dream for Christmas. He showed us that it is possible for the people and for the world. We remember the words, you become what you believe. Yeah, the world is going to be what you believe. We are what we believe, and we shape our identities around what we feel to be true about ourselves. And we grow into it. We grow into what we believe, even though it may not be here now. And God's kingdom comes through me, through you, and through our lives. And Advent is the promise of a new day and a new earth, a new history and a new relationship with God. It envisions the new humanity and a new being, and it comes through you and through me, dreaming the impossible today and every day. And I would like for us to stand to sing the Lord's Prayer, and I want you to really think about God's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. For this is our prayer.